Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 317. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have had a good week. It's been a crazy week, especially the last 24 hours. Yesterday, there was this huge feud on social media between President Trump and Elon Musk, a anticipated breakup that they had yesterday, and it was all concerning the national debt, the big beautiful bill that the Republicans are trying to pass in the Senate now. It's passed from the House of Representatives. If you guys have watched this podcast, you know that this is a big issue that I've been talking about for a long time, that I view the national debt as our biggest national security risk. Everything that Elon was saying about the national debt, he was 100% right. He was bringing up old posts from Donald Trump complaining about the debt and the deficit. And we're getting ready to pass over. If you see here, we're at 36.9 trillion, getting ready to pass over 37 trillion. We hit 36 trillion in November 2024. We crossed over 36 trillion. So it's been about 7 months. And we are adding another $1 trillion. So, I've talked about this. If you've watched past podcasts of mine, I've been talking about this forever, and I'm still going to get back into explaining how we amassed $37 trillion in debt. A few podcasts ago got diverted and started talking about the Democratic Party, what's going on in the Democratic Party, which I'm going to pick up where I left off in the last podcast. Just wanted to explain some stuff about this because we're going to get back into talking about where this 37 trillion, how we amassed this $37 trillion. And you have to understand that. You have to understand where this debt came from to understand how we get out of this debt and what we're up against with this debt. And, and the feud between Donald Trump and Elon Musk was about this, but I've been talking about this forever. A lot of us have, and it's a huge problem. So, we passed 36 trillion in November. We're getting ready to pass 37 trillion. We're in June now. So about 7 months, 8 months, we've added another $1 trillion. And if you look at this chart, which since I've been talking about this, showing this chart, each color, each block here is how long it took to add $1 trillion. So from 1996 to 2002, it took 7 years to add $1 trillion to the national debt. And then from 2002 to 2004, it took 3 years to add $1 trillion. And then less than 3 years, and then a little bit over 2 years, and then 2 years to add. And now we're adding $1 trillion to the national debt every 90 to 120 days. And we've added $1 trillion to the national debt. The last $1 trillion was about 8 months, from November to June. So this is a huge problem. Elon Musk is right that this is a huge problem. He's right for calling out the Republicans, not just Donald Trump. But when Elon Musk came on the scene, and you remember the event at Madison Square Garden when Lutnick brings him on stage. How much are you going to cut out of this massive federal budget? $2 trillion is what he said. And they revised that down from $2 trillion once he got in there. And now the Doge cuts are expected to be right a little bit over $100 billion. Okay. So it is what it is. I've been telling you about this. We're going to get back into this in a future podcast. I just want to cover some things that I've talked about in light of this new blow up between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. But I've told you that if you really want to cut the national debt, what you're going to have to do is get in here. You're going to have to cut Social Security. You're going to have to cut Medicaid, and Medicare. There's no other way to do it. And you're going to have to cut some of this national defense too. But what you got to understand, Elon is absolutely right about this. He's right about the debt. He's right about the big, beautiful bill, although the big, beautiful bill actually cuts the deficit more than the proposed DOGE cuts. So, but Elon Musk is right about the debt and calling out the debt. Trump's right too, in calling out Elon Musk, that Elon Musk got mad because they are removing the subsidies for electric vehicles, which his business is electric vehicles. And this whole tweet chain and back and forth between them on social media was so childish yesterday. But what you have to understand, and it doesn't seem that Elon Musk doesn't understand this, is that the bill that they're passing, the big, beautiful bill that they have to get passed before August, the fiscal year for the government goes October to October. So they have to get this done before August because this is not a budget bill. A budget bill is different from a reconciliation bill. This bill that they're trying to do, the big, beautiful bill before August, is a reconciliation bill that raises the debt ceiling. And there's strict rules on what can be cut in a reconciliation bill. A reconciliation bill only needs 50 votes, a simple majority. So that means they can bypass the filibuster. They can do this without any Democrats obstructing them. And they are restricted on what they can cut. This is not a budget bill. You need to understand that. Doesn't seem like Elon Musk understands that getting Trump's agenda, this agenda that Trump wants, making the tax cuts permanent, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security payments. There's money in there to secure the border. All of this stuff is Trump's agenda, and he can get it done without any Democrats because they can bypass the filibuster with this reconstruction bill or reconciliation bill. And it also raises the debt limit. Now, why are we here, people? We are in this situation because of Republicans in Congress. Republicans in Congress back in 2023, they passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, is an act of the 118th United States Congress that suspended the debt limit until January 2025. So the Speaker of the House when this passed was Kevin McCarthy. And I've talked about this, how Joe Biden took Kevin McCarthy to the woodshed. Kevin McCarthy went into the Oval Office and met with Biden by himself without any other Republicans. And he agreed to this deal. And Joe Biden took him to the woodshed. He gave Joe Biden a unlimited debt ceiling for the remainder of his term and didn't even get anything for it. And if Republican and 100 and something Republicans joined with Democrats to pass this to give Joe Biden an unlimited debt ceiling for 2 years. And Joe Biden didn't pass a budget in his last year. They pushed this off, and then Trump comes in, and then the very first thing he's faced with is this debt ceiling crisis in January of 2025 because members of his own party, Republicans, gave Joe Biden and pushed the debt ceiling debate off for 2 years until Donald Trump came into office. And that's the first thing he's dealing with was this debt ceiling debate. And they pushed it until August. They did a small increase until August, and then they have to get this done before August or we're going to default. But if Kevin McCarthy would have extended the debt limit for 1 year instead of 2 years, then they could have been having this fight with Republicans in charge of the House of Representatives and being able to control, if we get this done or not. They could have been having this fight in Biden's last year, in an election year. It would have been I don't understand why Kevin McCarthy did this. And this is why Donald Trump is in the situation that he's in right now. Joe Biden didn't pass a budget. They did continuing resolutions through his last year, So in one of the post that Donald Trump put out. He says that, I didn't make this mess. I'm just trying to fix it, is what he says. And yes, there's a lot of spending in this bill, the big, beautiful bill. But you got to understand, too, that Republicans have to get elected again next year. Next year is going to be a big year. Donald Trump doesn't want Republicans to lose the House of Representatives next year. So he can't just be making drastic cuts, to things that Americans need. And then next year, when they go into the midterm elections, the Republicans are butchered because they did all this stuff. This big, beautiful bill is, honestly, it's not perfect, but it's the best that they can do. And they can't make all the cuts that Elon wants them to make because it's a reconciliation bill that only needs a simple majority and not a budget bill. All right. So we'll get back into this in a future podcast because we're going to talk about this and see if the Senate is able to get this passed. And we're going to get back into explaining how we amassed this $37 trillion in debt. But today I want to get back into what I've been talking about in the past few podcasts. And we've been talking about the Democratic Party and the shambles that the Democratic Party is in right now. That was one of the posts in this back and forth between Elon Musk and Trump yesterday. Elon Musk puts out a post. We need a third party. We need a third party that represents a third party, a moderate party that represents the 80% in the middle. And I saw someone put out a post responding to that, saying the Republican Party is not a moderate party now. You have all these people in Congress, like I just told you, Republicans in Congress that voted to give Biden an unlimited debt ceiling for 2 years. And so the debt ceiling debate's waiting for Trump when he first, you don't think that, and they voted with Democrats to do that. And we already have a moderate party. We have two of them. They work together. But anyway, so we were talking about Kamala Harris and the fact that she should have never been the nominee, that she was the most unpopular vice president in history. Her unfavorables were sky high. Her favorables were low. There was rumors that she had all of this turnover with her staff and that she wasn't, a good boss. There were all these negatives and she should have never been the nominee. But the reason she was the nominee, the reason she was on the ticket in the first place is because of identity politics. And that's what we've been talking about. So another piece of controversy this week came from Karine Jean-Pierre, Biden's press secretary, and she is hawking a book that will come out in October. And the book is called Independent. And she said that she's leaving the Democratic Party because she's becoming an independent. And she put out this video promoting her book that's coming out in October and why she's leaving the Democratic Party. Let's listen to a little of this.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us? What do we do next? Because we don't have answers here. That's what they ask me. And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of
cheap fake. That's her new nickname. So we're going to be calling Karine Jean-Pierre Cheap Fake from here on out on this podcast. So Cheap Fake is leaving the Democratic Party to become an independent. Let's just do a little.
They ask me, and this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. And that's what I've done. And that's what this book does. And here's the truth. And here's how I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is, if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to.
The community I belong to. But remember, she was promoted. Identity politics. The same reason that she was the press secretary is the same reason Kamala Harris was the vice president. Because Karine Jean-Pierre, cheap fake, was the first Black, openly lesbian all these DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion reasons that she was made the press secretary that had little to do with her abilities to be the press secretary is why she was the press secretary. Same reason Kamala Harris was the vice president, because she was the Black woman, that she met the criteria of a Black woman. So the knives came out for cheap fake. The knives came out. The Democratic Party and people from within the Biden administration started coming out for Karine Jean-Pierre, saying what I just said, saying that she wasn't qualified for the job, saying that, that she was a clout chaser, saying that, there were all kinds of things that were said about her. Knives are out from Democrats to come in at cheap fake because she is leaving the Democratic Party. Don Lemon did a show on his podcast talking about this, and he drops a little tea. He drops a little tea that we're just now hearing, and I want you to listen to what Don Lemon says about Karine Jean-Pierre.
But I could really go in on the Democratic Party and what happens at the White House and all of that. But let me just say, I know it was not easy for Karine Jean-Pierre over at the White House. And I'm not sure that if you listen to what the streets are saying, I'm not sure that she was treated kindly at the White House, just as I am not sure that Kamala Harris was treated kindly by the Biden administration as well.
Wow. Don Lemon says that the streets are saying that he says he's not sure, but the streets are saying that Karine Jean-Pierre and Kamala Harris were not treated kindly. That's what Don Lemon says. Don Lemon says that Kamala Harris, the vice president, and Karine Jean-Pierre were not treated kindly by the Biden administration. And he goes further into what the streets are saying. Tell us more about what the streets are saying, Don.
And I'm not sure that if you listen to what the streets are saying, I'm not sure that she was treated kindly at the White House, just as I am not sure that Kamala Harris was treated kindly by the Biden administration as well. The streets are talking.
Streets are talking.
Now, this is what I'm hearing. This is what the streets are saying. Allegedly, reportedly, the Biden administration wasn't so good to Black people behind the scenes. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what he's hearing, that the Biden administration, we're just learning this now from Don Lemon, that the streets are saying that he is hearing that the Biden administration was not good to Black people behind the scenes. And that's why they were mistreating Karine Jean-Pierre and Kamala Harris. This is what Don Lemon is saying that the streets are saying. Don Lemon is saying that the streets are saying that the Biden administration was not good to Black people behind the scenes. Oh, wow.
The streets are talking.
Streets are talking.
Now, this is what I'm hearing. This is what the streets are saying. Allegedly, reportedly, the Biden administration wasn't so good to Black people behind the scenes.
The Biden administration wasn't so good to Black people behind the scenes. Wow. Is that surprising to anyone? When you know Joe Biden's history, Kamala Harris called him out for being a racist in the debate in 2020. Say you were friends with Robert Byrd, with Storm Thurmond, these people who were racist, Kamala Harris, and then she went and campaigned on it, selling T-shirts. And that little girl was me. All right, so this conversation, boy. So this is a conversation between April Ryan. They're on the Bulwark podcast. It's a podcast that's hosted by Michael Steele. Michael Steele used to be the chair of the RNC. He's a Republican, but now he's turned his back. He's one of those old school Bush neocon types of Republicans, and now he's turned his back on the Republican Party. Now the Republican Party is MAGA. He has a show on MSNBC. So he's basically a rhino in the true sense of the word, Republican in name only. He's having a conversation with other hosts from MSNBC, this Eugene Daniels guy. He was the keynote speaker at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I believe he's taken Rachel Maddow's job. Jason Johnson is a professor and host on MSNBC. And April Ryan, who is a Black woman who was on the Zoom call with the Win with Black Women. She's, part of the force that propelled Kamala Harris not only to get to be the running mate with Joe Biden, but also to get the nomination after Joe Biden dropped out. And I believe she's a journalist that works for either The Root or I'm not sure where she works for. Okay. Very interesting conversation they have here. Take a listen.
And had somebody come to him, had they had a meeting after 2022 midterms and said, what you need to do is during your State of the Union of 2023, say, remember when I told you I was just going to be a transitional president? I meant it. And had he said at the State of the Union in 2023, and there's two ways to say this stuff. Obviously, we've all thought about this.
I want you to, so what Jason Johnson is saying is that after the 2022 midterm, that next year when Joe Biden did his State of the Union in 2023, would have been first quarter 2023, that he would have made the statement at that time that, look, I said I was going to be a transitional president. I'm not going to run for re-election, is what Jason Johnson says here, is that Biden should have announced at that time in 2023, before you're getting into his last year as president, so they could have had time to have a primary or whatever. Look, just listen to what he says.
Remember when I told you I was just going to be a transitional president? I meant it. And had he said at the State of the Union in 2023, and there's two ways to say this stuff.
They all agree. Watch how they all agree. They're all shaking their head. Is that, yeah, that's what Biden should have done. That's what Biden should have done, is that he should have said that, look, that after they lost the House and they didn't, if you notice how they told the story, that there was supposed to be this red wave, and Republicans didn't do as well as predicted, that would have been the time. And there's a reason why Republicans didn't do as well as predicted. It had to do with the 2020 census, because the 2022 midterms was the first election after that the new congressional districts were drawn after the 2020 census. So that had a lot to do with why there wasn't a red wave. But getting off course, that they're saying that after that election that Joe Biden should have just said, look, I'm not going to run anymore.
Meant it. And had he said at the State of the Union in 2023, and there's two ways to say this stuff. Obviously, we've all thought about this. You say, hey, I'm transitional, I'm not running again. And then you say, and people would have been mad, but it's understandable, I am also not endorsing anyone, because
now he says, and people would have been mad. Then you say, now so he's saying that Joe Biden should have announced in the early 2023 that he's not running anymore. And they all agree with him. And then he says that, and he should have said, and I'm not endorsing anyone. And I want you to look at what April Ryan's face, her face when she registers what he just said.
And had he said at the State of the Union in 2023, and there's two ways to say this stuff. Obviously, we've all thought about this. You say, hey, I'm transitional, I'm not running again. And then you say, and people would have been mad, but it's understandable.
Who would have been mad when he says that people would have been mad, but it's understandable? If you say that that not only that I'm not running anymore, I'm not endorsing anyone, that I'm not going to endorse your vice president, Kamala Harris. That's what he's saying. He's saying that Biden should have not only said in early 2023 that I'm not running for re-election, but he also should have said that I'm not endorsing Kamala Harris. And he says, and people would have been mad. Who would have been mad? Watch April Ryan's face and you'll see who would have been mad.
Position, I'm not running again. And then you say, and people would have been mad, but it's understandable. I am also not endorsing anyone because while I chose.
Look at her face. She was with him when he was saying that, yes, Biden should have gotten out in 2023 or at least announced in 2023 that he's not running anymore. And they were all shaking their head. They all agreed with it that yes, Biden should have announced that he wasn't running anymore. But then when Jason Johnson, professor, says that he should have also said, I'm not endorsing anyone. I'm not endorsing Kamala Harris. Look at April Ryan's face. He says, no, you can't say that. You got to say that because when he says people would have been mad, the people that he's talking about are people like April Ryan, the people who were on the Zoom call, the 92% of 6%. The black women that forced Kamala Harris on the ticket in 2020, the black women that were doing the Zoom call, that were putting all their power and their weight behind Kamala Harris to become the nominee, even though she couldn't win. That those are the people that would have been mad if Joe Biden would have not only said that, or would have said that he is not running anymore, but also said that he's not endorsing Kamala Harris. That would have been a big issue. And look at April Ryan's face. She's like, no, you can't say that. Yes, I agree that Joe Biden should run for re-election, but I don't agree that he should not have endorsed Kamala Harris. You got to understand what's going on here, people.
At the State of the Union in 2023, and there's two ways to say this stuff. Obviously, we've all thought about this. You say, hey, I'm transitional, I'm not running again. And then you say, and people would have been mad, but it's understandable, I am also not endorsing anyone because while I chose Harris as my vice president, I think it should be up to the American people or the Democratic primary voters to make their decision.
She's having a hard time with it.
And then just have a freaking primary. I think had he done that in 2023, we might, I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't have been
an open might have had a different result in 2024.
Yeah, I agree with Jason on this. Again, a student of Jason Johnson.
I agree with Jason on this.
I think he's absolutely right. I mean, I've said during the time in a number of conversations that we had, Republicans like myself and Rick Wilson will be joining us a little bit later. And Rick is one of those Republicans having these conversations, trying to figure out, how to navigate the space. And one of them was, so what that moment, to Jason's point, should have occurred at that State of the Union or immediately after that State of the Union. Even if they didn't do it the way Jason just described, but then on the heels of that, there should have been a committee of principals who went to the White House and said, Mr. President,
Nancy Pelosi.
And so, and here's the rub for Nancy Pelosi and a Barack Obama on the back end to sort of slip and slide away.
Listen to what he's saying. So he's criticizing what Nancy Pelosi and Obama tried to do after the debate, after Biden was exposed, and if you go back to Karine Jean-Pierre and her reasoning for writing this book, she says that the portion of her book that she's focusing on, portion of time that she's focusing on in this book, is the 3 weeks after the debate and the day that Joe Biden dropped out on that Sunday. So those 3 weeks that from the debate until Joe Biden drops out, and in the middle of that, there's an assassination attempt on Donald Trump in the middle of those 3 weeks. So there's 3 weeks, the debate, assassination attempt, and then Biden drops out. So her book is going to focus on those 3 weeks. And those 3 weeks is what Michael Steele is talking about here when he's saying that what Obama and Pelosi and what that group did trying to control things on the back end and from behind the scenes, that was wrong, is what Michael Steele is referring to now. He's criticizing Pelosi and Obama and what they did in trying to force Biden out, but also trying to convince Biden not to endorse Kamala Harris. This is hugely important.
And to try to, in the view of a lot of people, of certainly a lot of Democratic voters, undermine the president. The way they did.
Undermine that Michael Steele is saying that Obama and Nancy Pelosi undermined the president of the United States, Joe Biden, is what he's saying here. He's criticizing Barack Obama.
Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi.
And here's the rub. For Nancy Pelosi and a Barack Obama on the back end to sort of slip and slide away and to try to, in the view of a lot of people, of certainly a lot of Democratic voters, undermine the president the way they did, that was just bad form. It was bad politics. I mean, who's advising you? I mean, in what world do you think you rationally can get away with that and not have Joe Biden, who is an Irishman to his core, when you back him into a corner like that, what is he going to do? He's going to lock and load. He's going to lock in. He's not going to move. He's not going to make it easier. But that process was aborted, if it was even considered, for whatever, I think to Eugene's point, because there's a lot of Skrilla to be made if the campaign goes on. The second piece that Jason raises up, which is probably the driver, in my view, at the end of the day.
The driver. The second thing that Jason brings up, which is the driver. This is the most important point in all of this, and why all of this played out the way that it did is what Michael Steele is getting ready to say.
Jason raises up, which is probably the driver, in my view, at the end of the day, was the driver. Y'all familiar with the Sound of Music in that famous song, What Do You Do With a Problem Like Maria?
What do you do?
What do you do with the problem like Kamala?
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm. They did not know what to do with her.
Exactly.
They didn't know what to do with Kamala.
They did not want to do what they should have done with her.
Mm-hmm.
And
what they should have done with her?
What they should have done with her, April, is not allowed her to be the nominee. Because she couldn't win. That's what they should have done with her. And like Michael Steele is saying, they didn't know what to do with her because they knew if they moved past Kamala Harris and tried to get a nominee who would be more competitive, someone who could win, then they were going to catch ire. They were going to make people angry, like what Jason Johnson says, because they bypass Kamala Harris. That was the problem with Kamala Harris, is that she had this huge, massive support from Black women like yourself who were on the Zoom call. And that was a problem. They couldn't move past Kamala Harris because of this identity politics issue. And that was the problem for Obama and Pelosi. I've been explaining this to you for weeks. This was Karine Jean-Pierre in February. She talks a little bit about what motivated her in this talk here, what motivated her to write this book and to leave the party, and listen to what she says about those 3 weeks between the debate, the end of the debate when Biden is exposed, and then when he finally drops out.
Look, personally, I think what was the toughest thing to see in the 3 weeks was there was a disconnect for me. What was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly, as my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad. And I had never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen a party do that in the way that they did. And it was.
I've never seen, it was a firing squad the way that they came after Joe Biden. Who's she talking about? She's talking about this guy right here. She's talking about Barack Hussein Obama, and she's talking about Pelosi and Schumer and Jeffries and Clooney. That the way that they came after Joe Biden in those 3 weeks to forcing him to finally withdraw from the race, and then he ends up endorsing Kamala Harris. That's what she's talking about, that 3 week period, and that there was a firing squad by those guys to take out Joe Biden.
As my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad, and I had never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen a party do that in the way that they did, and it was hurtful and sad to see that happening. A firing squad around a person who I believe was a true patriot, a person who I believe did everything that he can for this country, a person who I believe, as I mentioned before, has done more in one term than most presidents had done in 2 terms, historical things. And I was shocked by what I was seeing.
She was shocked by what she was seeing from Obama and Clooney and Pelosi and Schumer and all of them. All right, back to this discussion. And I want you to listen to what April Ryan says now.
But let's get to this piece. Let me tell you, there were a lot of people in that White House who were mad with Kamala and never got over it after she was on that campaign trail when she
the first lady, Jill.
That's what I was telling you. This is what I'm telling you. Jill was that didn't like. So this is what I don't understand is because Cheap Fake here is saying that, that she respected Joe Biden and she hated the way that Obama and the firing squad, that they forced Biden out, and she couldn't believe the way that Obama was and the others were treating Biden, and she's never seen a party act like that. She's disgusted is what she seems like. She seems like she's still very loyal to Joe Biden, and she's got a lot of respect for Joe Biden, which is weird because Don Lemon says that the word on the street is that the Biden administration, that they didn't treat black people well, and they didn't treat Kamala Harris well, and they didn't treat Cheap Fake well. They didn't that the Biden administration didn't treat them well, and I don't understand because maybe Biden wasn't the one mistreating them. Maybe it was Jill. Maybe it was Jill and her minions and other people within the administration. And that's what the April Ryan is talking about here. April Ryan is going back to 2020 and the 2020 primary when Kamala Harris called out Joe Biden on that debate stage for being a racist, for being friends with Robert Byrd, for being friends with Strom Thurmond. And then she went and campaigned on it, selling T-shirts. That little girl was me. That Joe Biden, campaigning on the fact that Joe Biden's a racist. That April Ryan is saying there's a lot of people, and Eugene says, including the First Lady, Jill Biden, that never forgave Kamala Harris for that. That's what they're saying here. That's what April Ryan is saying here, is that they brought her on to be the running mate because she was forced onto the ticket because she was a black woman. They forced her on the ticket. Joe Biden and Jill wanted to run with Gretchen Whitmer, but the black Democrat said you have to pick a black woman. So she was forced on the ticket. And what April Ryan is saying, that a lot of people, including, Eugene says, including the First Lady, that they never forgave her for this. They never forgave her for this. Let's listen to more April Ryan here.
Let me tell you, there were a lot of people in that White House who were mad with Kamala and never got over it after she was on that campaign trail when she
the First Lady. The First Lady never got over it.
Okay, now
the First Lady wanted to run with Gretchen Whitmer. The First Lady wanted to run with Gretchen Whitmer, and people like April Ryan and others forced Joe Biden to pick a black woman. But yes, the First Lady
got over it after she was on that campaign trail when she
the First Lady. The First Lady never got over it.
Okay, now he's calling names down too.
Look, that's public. That's public.
It's public for some. But
anyway, for the record, that's public.
It's public for some. But so there are people who never got over that. And there are a lot of people in that White House. Eugene was getting those stories and publishing them left and right in Politico because people were mad at her. And it was the emperor with the new clothes. That was not a White House that was together at all.
Wow. We're just finding out this stuff now from April Ryan and from Don Lemon that Biden administration didn't like black people, mistreat black people, and that the White House wasn't a cohesive White House, and there was a lot of divisions. Crazy how we're just learning this stuff now.
Because people were mad at her. And it was the emperor with the new clothes. That was not a White House that was together at all. They had their eye off the ball. They were going after Karine, going after Kamala, going after a whole bunch of people when they should have been focused on the president and realizing that man could not go out there.
So where does this...
Wait, hold on. Let me finish. Let me
go ahead.
And then on top of that, some of the issues that he tried to deal with in the campaign, policing, so a lot of domestic issues that they wanted to deal with. Anita Dunn said no. It wasn't him saying no because she felt it wasn't the time.
Anita Dunn's a white lady, just to let you know. She's one of Biden's aides, and she's a white lady, just to let you know.
A lot of domestic issues that they wanted to deal with. Anita Dunn said no. It wasn't him saying no because she felt it wasn't the time. He had the people around him that did not support him to help him look favorable, and they were going after people just because they could. And then now they got called out. None of these people are getting jobs. They're not on the speaking circuit because people don't want to hear from them. Biden is over. Okay, let's deal. A lot of those people can't even get jobs now because of how it's been played out. And how it's this all this MAGA, and they've even blackballed a lot of these people. So if we're gonna be real, let's be real about it.
Let's be real.
I will also add,
Baltimore real.
Let's be real.
I will also add, because I think this is important politically moving forward, which is, again, I want to be sort of forward thinking about consequences, but not talking about elections, because I think it's insane to talk about 2026 or 2028 at this point.
Yeah.
But we have to, of course, recognize the past in order to understand the future. He never wanted to pick her, right? So let's be clear about that. He never wanted to pick her. He made a decision based on the counsel of somebody that we all know. And that always had an impact. So when you see people who are partnered in unnatural ways.
Unnatural ways. Don't let Eugene hear you say that. People who are partnered in unnatural ways. He ain't talking about you, Eugene. He's talking about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were partnered in unnatural ways. He says Joe Biden didn't want to pick her. No, Joe Biden did not want to pick her. Joe Biden wanted to run with Gretchen Whitmer. Jill Biden wanted to run with Gretchen Whitmer. Joe Biden's team wanted Gretchen Whitmer, but black activists forced Joe Biden to pick Kamala Harris, and that's why they ended up in the situation that they're in. I'm sorry for beating a dead horse. But I just want to explain how identity politics got them into this situation, and identity politics is the reason that the Democratic Party was in this predicament in the 2024 election. It went back to the 2020 election, and it went back to Kamala Harris being forced on the ticket when Joe Biden never wanted to pick her, and Joe Biden didn't like her, and there was obviously animosity in the White House, a lot of animosity, and we're just learning about this stuff now. Well, Barack Obama played a big role, and like I said in the last podcast, we're going to get in a little bit into this article today. I recommend going and reading the entire thing because there is some hot tea in this article. But the Democratic Party, after 20 years of Obama and Obama being running things in the Democratic Party for almost 20 years now, they're tired of it. Democrats are tired of Obama and they want to move on from Obama. I want to just read a little bit of this. After Kamala Harris entered the presidential race last year, she reached out to Barack Obama campaign alum Jim Messina to help her with her White House bid. But when Messina shared the news with Vice Presidents shared the news of the vice president's offer with a friend, he received a stern warning. His friend told him, I said, Jim, if you get involved in this, it'll be political suicide. Democratic mega donor John Morgan, a longtime Harris critic, recalled his conversation with Messina. He had served in Obama's White House and managed his successful 2012 reelection campaign. Quote, you're going to be a loser. If you get into this, Messina, you're going to be a loser, and your whole shine, and your whole shine is you're undefeated. That your appeal is that you're undefeated. And if you get involved with Kamala Harris, you're going to be a loser. Everyone knew she was going to lose. Everyone knew she couldn't win. Obama knew she couldn't win. Pelosi knew she couldn't win. But the reason that they had to make her the nominee is because of this pressure from black Democrats, namely black women, that said, no, you can't have anybody else but Kamala Harris. It's her turn. She's the nominee. They all knew she couldn't win. And that's what this mega donor told Messina. Don't get involved in this because your shine's going to be gone. You're going to be a loser. Messina declined the job. And after Harris's loss to Donald Trump, it may not have been a bad move. David Plouffe, who we talked about in the last podcast, who was Obama's campaign manager, and then he went over to England and helped David Cameron become prime minister over there. He had shine on him. David Plouffe has shine after, winning those two elections. And he was a sought after political, strategist and campaign manager. Not no more. David Plouffe, long held as the brilliant architect of Obama's 2008 victory, served a key role in Harris's campaign and is now among those tagged with a devastating defeat. Quote, the shine is off Plouffe now. He was the golden boy, Morgan said. Now he's just an old broken down boy who lost big. Messina did not comment on the exchange. Plouffe did not respond to any requests for comment. Plouffe commented to Jake Tapper in their book. Plouffe went on record, one of the few people that went on record in that book. But he didn't comment on this article. While many Democrats still admire Plouffe's success, the harsh words punctured a growing, what is that? Perpetuated. The harsh words perpetuated a growing sentiment across a party searching for a path forward. Team Obama's bloom may be falling off the rose. That Obama is no more. And we need to, and that's what more of the article goes into is how it's time to move away from Obama. That Obama not only organized everything in 2020, he's the one who made Obama. If you go back to what Jay Johnson said in on Meet the Press, that played it in the last podcast, and they're talking about how bad the Democratic Party is in the dumps. And Jay Johnson says the Democratic Party is known for three things. He said that it's known for identity politics, open borders, and political correctness. And then he says that if I were heading the Democratic Party now, I would go back and I would talk to the people who voted for Bernie Sanders and then voted for Trump and try to find out what motivated them. Well, we know what motivated them. Joe Rogan was one of those people. He was a Bernie guy who voted for Trump. There are many of them. But Bernie could have been the nominee, maybe would have been the nominee back in 2020 if this guy's not putting his finger on the scale, if this guy's not running things. So he's running things in 2020. He's attempting to run things in 2024 and force Biden out and force Kamala off the ticket. I mean, he was actually correct about that because he understood Kamala Harris couldn't win. But people are sick of Obama and him behind the scenes running things. And this was the clip from Meet the Press where they're discussing that article. I played a little bit of it in the podcast in the last podcast, but let's play this clip again, talking about the article about how Democrats are ready to move beyond Obama and Obama politics, that the shine on Obama is gone. The bloom has fallen off his rose is what this article says. So let's listen to this clip.
Following President Trump's victory last year, some Democrats are beginning to openly criticize former President Barack Obama's strategists and consultants, who, of course, have played a huge role in the direction of the party in recent years. The so-called Obama coalition, made up of less politically engaged voters, younger voters, and voters of color, largely shifted toward Trump in 2024. As NBC News notes, Obama himself remains a force in the party, filling stadiums and commanding the attention of major donors. But even the former president's luster was showing signs of fading last fall. When the 2028 presidential election arrives, it will be 20 years since Obama's first victory. At that point, more voters will have come of age in the era of Donald Trump than in the era of Obama. And Jonathan, it's a great point. Like, first of all, there is this idea. I know there's been some resentment in the Democratic Party that Obama himself kind of only shows up at the end. He's the closer in these elections. But I think his team will push back and say, well, that's what, because he's sort of scarce, that's what makes his appearances so meaningful. So let's set that aside. But it's more about, I think some of the people who work for him have come under a lot of fire lately. But it's also, in this case, it's more about the coalition of voters he built to get put together, which at the time, some Democrats thought, well, this could be the new permanent
Trump's
Democratic
coalition
Party.
now.
That has clearly not been the case. It feels like those voters very quickly got taken for granted.
Very quickly, those voters, the coalition of voters that voted for change you can believe in 2008 is what Obama was running on, that those voters very quickly got taken for granted is what he's saying. And that, I told you that I was going to explain to you how the Obama coalition from 2008 became the Trump coalition. How did that happen? How did the Obama coalition and the coalition of voters that voted Obama in 2008, how did they become the Trump coalition? And I told you that it didn't happen overnight. I was just using, this chart comes from the Catalyst data, from their report. This is just one example, of the trend. I was explaining you the trend, just with black voters, but you could see this trend among other demographic groups, but the trend is down. This is all black voters. This is black men. The trend is down. It wasn't that Kamala Harris, received 79% of black male vote out of nowhere. That I was explaining in the last podcast that in 2008, Obama got 98% of the black vote. So from in 19 years, 20 years, you're at about a 20-point drop, but it didn't happen overnight, a 20-point drop. It was incrementally. It was, from 98 to 95, from 95 to 90, from 90 to 86, from 86 to 79. And if this trend stays consistent, that, whoever the Democratic nominee is in 2028, you're going to be talking about 3/4 of black men voting for Democrat, the Democrat only getting 3/4 of black men's support. You're going to have to shut the party down, people. Shut it down at that point. But this is a trend. It didn't happen overnight. So how did this happen? This transformation from Obama voters in 2008 to Trump voters in 2016 and beyond. And a lot of it has to do with this picture. This picture they say that a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, this picture is worth 1,000,000 words right here. And you have to understand how this trend started. It started with the American people giving this group of people, not only Obama, but this group of people, Democrats in Congress, a immense amount of power, an immense amount of power. You see the look on Nancy Pelosi's face. She is drunk. She is drunk on power. Drunk. And all of them. You see John Lewis here. Look, you see back here, you see a young Pitzelneck, Adam Schiff. You can even see Dennis Kucinich's eyes here. They are drunk on power. This picture was taken in March of 2010 after they had forced through, with no Republicans voting for it, forced through the ACA, the Obamacare legislation. And they're celebrating They are, again, drunk on power. And like I said, that the American people had given these people a immense amount of power starting in 2006. 2006 was the midterm election of George Bush's second term. And, the line that George Bush said after that election was it was a slacking. Democrats won the House of Representatives. They won major wins in the Senate in both chambers. This is when Nancy Pelosi is made the first Speaker of the House in 2006. And then in 2008, when Obama is elected, they increase their gains in both houses. They increase their gains in the House of Representatives. They get a 60-seat majority, filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. This is the American people handed these people an immense amount of power on Barack Obama's platform of change you can believe in. We're electing you people to come in and change things. That's what we're electing you to do. And this picture is after they force the Obamacare legislation through. Now, in 2013, Steve Brill, author, investigative journalist, wrote this article for Time Magazine, Bitter Pill, Why Medical Bills Are Killing Us. And it's interesting, after the ACA and the Affordable Care Act, we are, 18 years down the road now, almost, and they're still talking about the problems with our healthcare. You have healthcare CEOs getting gunned down and people celebrating the guy that's murdering healthcare execs because our healthcare system is still, nothing. Look at how at Nancy Pelosi's face and think about where our healthcare is right now, still 20 years after they brought this massive healthcare change you can believe in. So Peter Brill puts this article out in Time in 2013, and this is after they passed Obamacare and they are starting to implement everything. And this was an explosive article. Basically what this guy does, he just goes and he finds 4 people that had long stays in hospitals, different hospitals, and he goes down and looks at the charges on their bills, and each line item, he goes down and he looks at all of this crazy stuff that is in this article. You should go back and read this article because this article is great. So he's exposing the real problem with our healthcare system that wasn't addressed in Obamacare. This is a interview with Stephen Brill. I want you to listen to a little bit of what he says here.
Stephen Brill has spent years investigating the healthcare industry and the creation of Obamacare. His new book is America's Bitter Pill: Money, Politics, Backroom Deals, and the Fight to Fix Our Broken Healthcare System. Stephen Brill is with us this morning. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning.
So the president promised that not only would healthcare be more accessible, but it would also be more affordable. Is that true?
Well, it's certainly more accessible to tens of millions of Americans, and it's more affordable to them because they're getting their insurance premiums paid for in large part by the government. So it's certainly not more affordable for the taxpayers.
For taxpayers.
We basically have created a system where the good news is that many more people get the kind of health care you and I get. The bad news is that the taxpayers are paying for it, and they're paying the same exorbitant prices that make the system so unworkable.
But the main criticism about healthcare in America is that the costs are too high. Did Obamacare do anything to bring down the cost of healthcare?
No. There are a couple of pilot projects. There are little things, but as I recount in the book, at every turn, when they tried to do something substantive to bring the cost down, such as control the price of drugs, deal with the exorbitant non-profit hospitals' high profits, they were stopped by the lobbyists. And the best test of all this is the only way that a bill this big will pass in Washington is if the powers that be, decide that it should pass.
The powers that be. So so he says that there were no they didn't address anything with the cost. And every time that they brought up the cost and tried to address costs, the profits, let's call cost profits, the profits of the healthcare industry, that the lobbyists forced them. Now, is that the change you voted for when you voted for change you can believe in, and you voted for the long-legged Mac Daddy back in 2008? Is that the change you can believe in, for lobbyists to get in there and to protect the profits of the healthcare industry, and for them to create a healthcare system that only makes insurance companies richer, that makes and pharmaceutical companies richer, that makes hospitals and the hospital companies richer? Is that what you voted for? Is that the change you voted for?
Companies are making more money. The hospitals are making more money. The medical device makers are making more money.
They're all making more money. They're all making more money. Everybody's making more money. The Obamacare law was a giveaway, was a corporate giveaway. We gave these people an immense amount of power, and they were drunk with that power, and they used it to advance corporate interests, not only with the ACA. Not only with the ACA. We were in the middle of a huge financial crisis in 2008 when we elect these people. A huge financial crisis. The Great Recession is what they called it. Housing crisis. People were losing their homes. Unemployment was up to 10%. And we elected them to change that, to change not only the corporate structure in the healthcare industry, but also to change Wall Street and to tackle Wall Street. What did they do? I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But so this picture is November or March of 2010, where Nancy Pelosi, look at this look on her face, man. This is March of 2010. In November of 2010, Republicans they won 63 seats in the House of Representatives. 60, they call it, this is the red wave that happened. Republican wave, red wave, 63 seats just months later. And this began a trend. This began the trend, that congressional election began this trend across all voting groups. But, where this is why voters didn't come out and vote for them in 2010, because they had already seen that this commitment to change that Obama had promised when he ran in 2008, that he was failing on that commitment in many ways. He wasn't, tackling corporate interests. He wasn't fighting Wall Street and protecting Main Street. He wasn't rebuilding the economy from the bottom up, like he said. None of that was happening. None of that was happening. I want you to listen to what Bata says here on CNN about Obama, and she's absolutely right.
And the reason that I think that is this: I've been thinking a lot about the 10 million Americans who lost their homes in the 2008 financial crisis, and how President Obama's first act in office was to give $700 billion to the banks that caused it, including $30 billion in bonuses to the crooks who organized it. And I'm thinking about how those very Americans saw a president pick Wall Street over Main Street, and what they saw this whole week was a president willing to go out there and fight for the forgotten men and women of this heartland and take on the entire international global order.
So she's talking about Obama, and she says that Obama, when he came in, he promised when he ran that he was going to take on Wall Street, and he was going to champion Main Street, that he was going to rebuild the economy from the bottom up. All this stuff that he was going to do. And Bata is absolutely right. Not only did he, as a member of the Senate before he was elected, you see that there's a reader's note here, and it says that the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, TARP, 2008, which allocated $700 billion, Troubled Assets Relief, TARP, was signed into law by George Bush, not Obama. And that's true. That George Bush did sign TARP into law in the fall of 2008, just as he's leaving office and Obama is coming in. But Obama, he was a member of the Senate. The Senate had to vote for TARP. So Obama voted for TARP, He got on the Senate floor and he defended Bush's policy on TARP. And then when he's elected, the very first thing that Obama does is a bill. And these guys, the very first thing they do is another $700 billion bill, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, a stimulus to further bail out these institutions that had not been covered in TARP. So, not only did he support TARP as a senator, then he signed the American Recovery Reinvestment Act as a president. All right, guys, I'm not going to be able to get to all this, but I just want to say this. This is the last thing I'm going to say in this, and then I may pick this up on the next podcast. I have a couple of other things that I want to share here to show, but Botts is absolutely right, but that should not surprise anybody because you look at Obama's economic team. Timothy Geithner was his Treasury Secretary who came from the New York Fed. Timothy Geithner was there in the 1990s with Bill Clinton that helped deregulate everything to set up the crash. He's in the Obama administration. Is that change you can believe in? Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler was there in the Clinton administration and was there for all of that deregulation. Obama put Gary Gensler in charge of the Commodity Future and Trading Commission. This was the commission that Brooksley Born was head of in the 1990s when she tried to regulate the derivatives that took down the economy. And Obama put him in charge of that. Obama had Larry Summers as his chief economic advisor. It should not surprise anyone that Obama passed legislation to bail out Wall Street when Larry Summers is your chief economic advisor. The same people that built the structure that failed is who Obama brought on. Is that change you can believe in? All right, so we'll get back into this in the next podcast. I have just a little bit more that I didn't get to. And then I'll see you guys on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend.